this is a coincidence. Yeah. So my wife is Piper Kerman, and for a long time I've been hearing these two words, "Where's Piper?" Including from many people in this room. So I'm totally sorry that she's not a very dramatic person for a woman who is a bisexual international drug ring conspiracy felon who went to prison. She's actually quite calm and undramatic, so it's odd that she couldn't get here, but it wasn't her fault. So we met 15 years ago at Kate's Kitchen in the Lower Haight, and when we moved to New York about 3 years later, one day we got a knock at our doorbell in our rental in the West Village, and it was two customs officers. And they had told her she'd been indicted on a federal crime for drug trafficking, for a crime she committed at that point was 6 years earlier. And then she called me and said, "Darling, we need to talk. There's something I didn't tell you." Which she did. 6 years later, 10 years after she committed the crime, she went to prison for 13 months in 3 different federal facilities. And I was thinking about this. Stacy here, who has never met Piper nor ever read on a stage before, is going to read a little bit from the book. And as I was thinking about this, it's just like a classic Stephen Elliott Rumpus event. The most traditional part of the evening, someone reading from a book, is about a bisexual drug smuggler who went to prison. So, with that, I will tell you that if you like what you hear, we really appreciate Stacy pinch hitting here. Piper's reading the book passage in Marin tomorrow, and then Booksmith on Wednesday. And it's, I'm biased, but it's quite good. And the Q&As afterwards are some of the most fascinating things I've ever heard in a gazillion years of book reading. So, Stacy Horn will read from Orange is the New Black.
I did read on a stage half a lifetime ago, though. All right, here goes. Anyone who received visits on a regular basis usually maintained at least one uniform exclusively for these occasions, one that fit well, was kept pressed and stain-free, and in some instances was specially tailored. It was against prison rules to alter clothing in any way, but that never stopped anyone from trying to find ways to make the drab men's uniforms a bit more flattering, a bit more feminine. Some women would iron patterned folds into the backs of the boxy, billowy shirts. Everyone knew which inmates had sewing skills, and you could trade commissary goods for a better fit. The Spanish mommies particularly liked to wear their pants tight, tight, tight. I was thrilled when someone gave me a pair of the most desirable flat front dickies, which had been taken in at the waist and tapered narrow at the ankle. The inner thighs were threadbare, but my fellow prisoners clicked their tongues approvingly as I sashayed to my visits. "Piper," my neighbor Delicious shouted appreciatively. "Brick house," Larry agreed, his eyes popping when he first saw me in the tight pants. Hair was at least as important as unis. This was not an issue for a blonde, straight-haired gal like me, but for the black and Spanish women, it was the source of endless preoccupation and countless woman hours. You could generally tell who was expecting a visit by the state of their hair. There were frequent disputes about chair time in the salon room, played out against the overpowering smells of perm solution and burning hair. The electric supply for the room was insufficient for the demand, and the circuits tripped all the time. But reprehensible de Simone refused to do anything about it. "They ought to close that so-called beauty salon down," he snarled when the gals in the shop suggested that the electric crew might work on the wiring there. "It's not working on these convicts." Once a prisoner completed her coiffure, she could move on to makeup. Approximately a third of the population wore makeup almost every day, out of habit, as an effort to feel normal or to be more alluring either to a staffer or another inmate. It was bought at the commissary, or in the case of one ex-stockbroker who was addicted to Borghese, smuggled in via a visitor. Before she left for the drug program, Nina gave me a little heart-shaped compact, the kind you might find at a dollar store, and I experimented with lurid eyeshadow colors. A significant percentage of the Spanish women had tattooed eyeliner, lip liner, and eyebrows, an effect I found unnerving. I associated it with meatpacking district's transsexual hookers. The tattooed brows never matched the real brows, which then had to be plucked or shaved, and with time they would fade from black to blue. Almost everyone expecting a visit would present themselves pressed, coiffed, and painted on the landing next to the payphones, where you could see your loved ones approaching up the hill from the parking lot. Those who weren't expecting visits would plant themselves on the stairs and anyway to observe the comings and goings as a source of vicarious entertainment. They could generally identify any regulars on site. Ooh, there's Ginger's kids. There's Angela's parents. He always drops her mom off before he parks. She's got a bad hip, you know. Visitors had to fill out a form stating that they had no firearms or narcotics on their person. The CO would then check the inmates' list to be sure that the visitor's name was on it. You had to hope that the list was up to date, something that was completely dependent on the inmate's counselor. Did he do his paperwork? Had he bothered to turn it in? If not, tough shit. It didn't matter who your visitor was or how far they had come to see you. They were not getting in. Larry told me how painful it was to watch every visitor, old or young, street punk or fancy yuppie, have to suck it up and kiss the prison guard's ass in the hope of calling some sort of favor. The power games that fueled so much of the prisoner guard experience extended to the visiting room. Larry came to see me every week, and I lived for those visits. They were the highlight of my life in Danbury, a chest-filling affirmation of how much I loved him. My mother drove 6 hours round trip until I begged her to come every other week. I saw more of her during the 11 months I was at Danbury than I had in all my previous adult years. Yoga Janet and Sister Platt always had lots of visitors, aging counterculture hipsters and rosy-cheeked lefties in homespun Guatemalan cottons, respectively. Sister Platt was frustrated by the BOP's effective censorship of her visiting list. International peace figures had tried to gain permission to visit her and had been denied. Some women never got visits because they had effectively said goodbye to the outside world. No children, no parents, no friends, nobody. Some of them were halfway around the world from home, and some of them didn't have a home. Some women stated flatly that they did not want their people to see them in a place like this. In general, the longer you were down, the fewer and farther between were your visits. I worried about my bunkie, Natalie, finishing her 8-year bid. She spoke to her young son on the phone every night and received many letters, but didn't have a single visit in the year we lived together. I observed the unspoken privacy wall we erected between us in our 7 by 10 foot space and never asked. Thank you.